Thanks for being here tonight. Seriously, however you ended up with us, we're glad you did. We're coming to you from our home base in Los Angeles, the global headquarters of movies, delusion, and people who clap when planes land. Today isn't just any random day in Hollywood. This is sacred ground. This is Oscar Nomination Day, which around here ranks somewhere between Christmas morning and the discovery of fire, a solemn spiritual occasion. Somewhere a publicist is already crying. The Academy dropped the nominations before sunrise, which means I was awake at an hour usually reserved for bakers and serial killers, mostly to confirm one crucial thing: Matt Damon did not get nominated. And for that, I would like to personally thank the Academy for its service. The big story: one film didn't just dominate, it rewrote history. Sinners racked up 16 nominations. 16. That's not just a good year, that's a biblical plague. It shattered the old record held by Titanic, All About Eve, and La La Land, which, if you remember, technically won Best Picture for about 4 minutes before the Academy realized it had just live-streamed a nervous breakdown. This year's Best Picture race features 10 films, including Battle After Another and Marty Supreme. And with Sinners in the mix, we've got vampires facing off against Frankenstein, which is exciting if you're 8 years old, or emotionally 8 years old. But witches, shut out completely. Wicked for Good got nothing. 0. No nominations, a real broom-to-the-face moment. One surprise nominee, the auto racing movie F1 scored a Best Picture nod, proving once again that Academy voters remain extremely attracted to Brad Pitt's existence. Now let me tell you what my Best Picture nominee is: a breakfast tortilla. This morning, I got a text from my dad. He sends me a photo mid-bite and says, "Does this look like anyone to you?" And there it was. A tortilla bearing the unmistakable face of Donald Trump. Not Jesus, not the Virgin Mary, just raw, authoritarian carbs. I asked him what he did next. He said he started eating it, then paused, then realized what he was doing, and threw it away, which is probably the healthiest decision anyone has made involving Trump this year. Speaking of Trump, today is a special day for the Trump household. It's Donald and Melania's 21st anniversary. 21 years ago, Melania said, "I do," and a very aggressive prenup came screaming into existence. Trump marked the occasion the only way he knows how, by reposting a stranger calling him the greatest president in history. Romance is dead, and judging by recent photos, he may want to be careful celebrating. His hands and face are currently operating in different color palettes. One looks like a marshmallow, the other like something rotating under heat lamps at Costco. There's also a mysterious bruise on his hand that doesn't quite line up with the "I shake a lot of hands" explanation, unless he's shaking hands with bricks. His team says he banged it on a table during a signing ceremony, which sounds reasonable if the table fought back. After weeks of threatening Greenland like it owed him money, Trump now appears to have completely lost interest. Asked whether the U.S. would acquire Greenland, he responded with a shrug disguised as diplomacy. Translation: bluff collapsed. And just like the wall, the caravans, and whatever animal panic was happening last week, Greenland will now vanish from his memory forever. Instead, Trump has unveiled his newest passion project, the Board of Peace, an organization that sounds like it was named by a middle schooler who just discovered PowerPoint. It's apparently meant to rival the United Nations, and membership only costs $1 billion. Naturally, Trump appointed himself chairman, because nothing says humility like being honored by your own idea. Shockingly, Western democracies passed, but leaders from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Hungary jumped right in. Putin was also invited, presumably between missile launches. The group looks less like a peace council and more like the villain lineup from a Saturday morning cartoon. They claim their first mission is rebuilding Gaza, now being explained by a very familiar mannequin with vocal cords, Jared Kushner. Hearing him speak was unsettling. For years, he communicated exclusively through vibes. Now he sounds like he's pitching luxury condos. Trump even invited the Pope to join the board. The Vatican responded by saying they need time to consider, which is diplomatic code for "we are laughing too hard to reply." Meanwhile, back in Washington, Jack Smith testified before Congress and calmly reminded everyone that the only reason Trump isn't in prison is because reality has a terrible sense of timing. He laid out, in plain language, the attempt to overturn an election and the storage of classified documents in places normally reserved for towel racks. Republicans spent the hearing attacking Smith instead of the facts until one Democrat finally said out loud what everyone already knows. Off camera, they all say the same things. On camera, they shrink. The Supreme Court is now preparing to rule on Trump's tariffs, which, according to new data, Americans paid for almost entirely. Trump made billions. We paid hundreds of billions. It's Robin Hood, but backwards and louder. J.D. Vance told people in Minnesota to do better, by which he meant stop wearing masks and don't go to Maine, which is advice no one asked for. Ted Cruz was spotted flying to California as Texas braced for dangerous weather. His team insists it was pre-planned, which is comforting because Texans know if they really need him, they can just whisper Cancun 3 times and he'll appear. Finally, Trump is once again threatening the media, this time through the FCC, attempting to weaponize decades-old equal time rules to silence shows that don't flatter him. It's a bureaucratic way of doing what he's always wanted. Mute criticism without technically calling it censorship. And to cap it all off, Trump posted online asking whether he should try for a 4th term, not a 3rd, a 4th. We've officially moved past authoritarianism and into numeracy issues. So with all that said, it's time once again for This Week in Unnecessary Censorship. As the legal and political pressure mounts, the thing to watch isn't just what's being said out loud, it's how fast institutions are moving behind the scenes. When systems that are usually slow suddenly pick up speed, it's not accidental. It means decisions have already been made. This week, while the country focused on speeches, outrage, and viral clips, something quieter but more consequential happened inside the federal court system. A request that normally drags on for weeks was shut down almost immediately. No dramatic hearing, no extended debate, just a firm answer delivered with unsettling efficiency. That kind of speed sends a message. Courts don't rush when they're uncertain. They rush when they believe the question isn't close. The appeal was supposed to function as a break, a way to slow everything down while bigger constitutional arguments were sorted out. That's been the playbook for years. Delay, stretch timelines, push consequences into the future. This time, the break failed. The judges didn't just reject the request, they rejected it collectively without dissent or hesitation. In legal terms, that matters. Unified rulings don't leave room for creative reinterpretation. They tell lower courts how narrow the road ahead has become. More important than the decision itself was how the court described the conduct at issue. The language was careful but unmistakable. The actions were framed as outside the normal scope of presidential authority, not controversial policy, not discretionary judgment, something else entirely. That distinction changes everything. For decades, presidential immunity lived mostly in academic debate. It was rarely tested because political pressure intervened first. Resignations, pardons, quiet deals. This time, the system didn't flinch. By treating immunity as a threshold issue rather than a philosophical puzzle, the court narrowed the battlefield. The question is no longer, how far does power extend? It's, does this conduct qualify at all? And this week, the answer appears to be no. Once that door closes, everything accelerates. Trial courts take cues from appellate courts. Prosecutors adjust timelines. Defense teams reassess delay tactics. Calendars fill. Deadlines stop being theoretical. What's striking is what hasn't happened. No emergency intervention, no pause, no effort to freeze the process. In Washington, that silence isn't neutrality, it's permission. The machinery is still running. And once it's moving, it doesn't care about rallies, polls, or messaging. Courts operate on procedure, not spectacle. Inside legal circles, this isn't being read as dramatic, it's being read as decisive. Confidence is poison for strategies built on uncertainty. That shift ripples outward. Other judges notice. Other cases feel the pull. Legal reasoning spreads. Arguments that once shielded now look fragile. While politics debates messaging, practical questions take over. What happens when court dates collide with campaigns, when obligations can't be postponed, when unpredictability disappears? Campaigns survive chaos. They struggle with fixed schedules. Institutions are designed to move slowly. When they don't, it means the path forward is clear. That clarity is what defense teams fear. Law enforcement agencies are watching quietly. Rising legal pressure often coincides with escalating rhetoric. They don't react publicly. They plan. What's unfolding doesn't look dramatic. No handcuffs, no spectacle. But structurally, this is the moment when systems align. Courts, prosecutors, security planners adjusting to a phase where delay isn't guaranteed. No one at the top is stepping in to stop it. Once that reality sets in, behavior changes. Calculations shift. Loyalty weakens. Distance becomes strategy. This isn't hypothetical anymore. It's trajectory, and the trajectory points forward. Pressure stops being abstract and becomes personal. Not loud, not obvious, but real. High-profile defendants aren't alone. They're surrounded by aides, lawyers, advisors, and staffers with their own exposure. When courts signal momentum, the math changes. Silence stops being safe. Waiting stops being neutral. Prosecutors don't need revelations. They have documents, testimony, metadata, timelines. What they need is time and cooperation. This ruling provides both. As delay weakens, leverage grows. Quiet leverage, subpoenas, plea discussions, conversations behind closed doors. Cooperation today looks different than resistance 6 months from now. Public messaging collides with legal reality. Politics rewards volume. Courtrooms reward precision. When those worlds overlap, friction is inevitable. Statements meant to energize supporters read differently under oath. Patterns matter. Escalation matters. Context matters. Nothing disappears. Screenshots persist. Archives don't forget. Words spoken now can be reviewed later without emotion. Security planning quietly intensifies. Coordination increases. Contingencies form, none announced, none debated. It just happens. Multiple processes are now running at once. Federal cases don't wait for state cases. Appeals don't pause trial courts. Fragmentation is intentional. It prevents one lever from stopping everything. For strategists, this is the nightmare. Predictability replacing chaos. Once court dates lock in, narrative control erodes. Courtrooms don't respond to spin. The most important signal isn't public, it's private. No pause, no reset, no intervention. The machinery is running on its own logic. This phase doesn't arrive with headlines. It arrives through deadlines, denials, scheduling orders. Small steps that don't trend but narrow outcomes. And once they accumulate, reversal becomes almost impossible. Legal, political, and psychological pressures are no longer separate. They're colliding. Control becomes scarce. For Trump, the greatest risk isn't judicial unpredictability. It's behavioral unpredictability. As options shrink, responses escalate. Language sharpens, accusations widen, politically energizing, legally alarming. Behavior unfolds in real time. Patterns emerge. The record is permanent. People around him face crossroads. Loyalty fades when consequences become concrete. Cooperation becomes strategy. Prosecutors understand that better than anyone. The coming weeks matter more than any headline. This is when plea talks happen, testimony solidifies, evidence chains lock in long before juries hear anything. Public attention drifts. The process doesn't. Some allies grow quiet, statements soften, silence replaces certainty. That silence isn't confusion, it's calculation. Once a process reaches velocity, distancing becomes easier than defense. Courts don't pause for campaigns. Judges don't reschedule for rallies. Political inconvenience isn't a legal argument. Unless forcibly stopped, the machinery moves forward, and there's no sign of a force stepping in. That's the reality coming into focus. Not collapse, not drama, something more unsettling, inevitability. This is no longer about whether accountability is possible. It's about how it unfolds, who it reaches, and what it reveals. The next developments won't be loud. They'll be procedural, technical, easy to ignore. And those are the moments that decide everything.